Today we got former Hawkeye running back LeShun Daniels with us. We're going to break down what we heard from Tim Lester, LeShun's thoughts on it, and fixing this Iowa offense. Plus, on the eve of the Super Bowl, we break it down all today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon. He's LeShun Daniels, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. LeShun, good to see you again here a day earlier than our normal Friday, but going to have a recap episode for tomorrow with the doubleheader of basketball on the horizon with Penn State on both the men's and the women's side. So thought we'd do this a day early and a little bit closer to what we heard from Tim Lester in the press conference earlier this week. Seth Wallace also named assistant head coach, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But good to see you, and on the eve here as we get ready right around the corner, Super Bowl 58. So a lot to talk about. How you doing?
Yeah, doing great, doing great. Excited to be on the pod again this week, and super encouraged by some of the things that I heard from Tim Lester and Coach Ferentz this week. So, super excited to dive into that and talk about that a little bit.
Well, let's get right into it and talk about Tim Lester. We had our thoughts a week ago about it. For everyday listeners here of the podcast, I think they know my initial thoughts. I thought it was uninspiring, kind of a boring hire, more vanilla. Here we go. Kirk with his love of ice cream. There's a little more vanilla down your throat, and that's all we were going to get. And I started to warm up a little bit, the deeper you dive into it after you look back and really the details of the Syracuse experience and how bad it was. Well, there were some major reasons for that. The time at Western Michigan, how it ended, and the deeper that I dove, the more excited I got. But then hearing him, I don't know if it was a complete 180 from where I was initially, but he won the press conference for me. I thought he was outstanding. He said the things that he needed to. Now that's just that. It's just talking. And until we see it on the field, that's a completely different aspect. But I really thought he knocked it out of the park. I think he talked to the fan base. You can tell he's been a guy as a former head coach that's done a lot of media. He was comfortable. There were some fun moments, some goofiness that's kind of in there too. Overall, I was really impressed after finally getting to hear from Tim Lester.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with all of that. I mean, he said a bunch of things that if you're just a fan of the Hawks, like that, like things that you want to be able to hear. And he talked about, the ability of being able to create explosive plays, being efficient from the quarterback position, and as well as developing route combinations and route concepts based on how defenses play the offense. So, like, those are some things that we want to hear a lot of it because, again, over especially over the past few years offensively, we haven't been as explosive as really as we need to be. The passing game has been very, very uninspiring, to say the least. So to hear that coming in from your new OC, I think is super, super encouraging. But another thing that I personally really like is the fact that he talked about the run game and how being really, really good in the run game is what's going to help move the offense forward. And I know I touched on this a little bit last week, but the places that Tim Lester's coach, especially at his time at Western Michigan, when it came to their offense, running the football was a big part of what they did and what they did extremely well. And Tim Lester talked about that quite a bit. And he expanded on that and said, the better that they're able to run the football, right, it opens up a lot more things in the passing game. It opens up a lot more opportunities for them to be able to do what you want to do. And the fact that they ran a bunch of 12 personnel at Western Michigan, and we've got the tight ends to run a bunch of 12 personnel here at Iowa. I think the marriage currently, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. And you kind of see why Coach Ferentz ended up choosing Tim Lester to be the OC, just because when you listen to him speak, you're like, okay, this is matching a lot of things that we like to hear typically from Coach Ferentz, and it also helps bring us into more of the year 2024 when it comes to offensive football. So I know, hey, it's early. We haven't even seen really what it's going to look like on the Iowa offense, right? We'll probably obviously get that first look and spring ball in about a month and a half. But for the most part, I think it's very, very encouraging to some of the things that we've heard from Tim Lester this week when it comes to bringing in his own style of offense and marrying it with what Iowa has done in the past and some of the things that Iowa does best.
You were involved early on. Obviously, Greg Davis coming in and taking over the coordinator. It was a rough start to things, but it certainly got very better. And you guys had some prolific offenses there, certainly for Iowa standards. Certainly in 2014, 15, those years were some really good numbers overall. But it took a while to get there. Does it feel like at least on the surface, that this marriage and this melding, coupled with a very veteran team and a very veteran offense, where you have an offensive line with 160 plus starts in their collegiate careers in your starting five. You have a quarterback that's played a lot of games. Now, injuries is a different conversation. A running back room that we talk about a ton. Tight ends. The question remains wide receiver. But being a veteran group like they are, and an offensive line that has a lot of starts there, does that make it, how much easier does that make it, I guess I should say, being able to do that and do that with a veteran group?
I think it makes it a lot easier. I mean, you think about those guys, they played a lot of football. They've seen a lot of different things that defenses have thrown at them. Obviously, they've installed, their own offense a million ton of times because you obviously always install new things every single year. And a bunch of these guys on offense, even though it hasn't been great, these guys have played football against some really, really good football teams. It's not like coming in from when Davis took over, and it wasn't a very that first year wasn't great. And it wasn't like Iowa was in Big Ten title games at that point in time. Anyway, so like this team that you're coming in to take over now, right? It's been to a Big Ten title championship game multiple times over the past 2 years, and you got a ton of experience on that offense with guys that have played a lot of snaps and have seen a lot of snaps. So I think when you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator who's trying to install a new system, I think having a lot of veteran guys that have been around a lot of football, that their football just knowledge is just at a high has at a higher base than some of your younger players, it's going to make it that much easier to install an offense because you can make similarities to maybe your previous system. You're going to start mirroring a little bit of the language, and things are going to be a lot more familiar for those veteran players to go ahead and to adjust to. Whereas if you've got a young team, you got guys that haven't played a ton of football, like it's already difficult enough to move on from your high school offense to a college offense, and then to go and switch that like a year after you've been in the system. I mean, it's definitely tough. But when you have guys that have played a lot of football that are in their third, fourth, fifth years, even 6 years, right at the and college football, it's going to make installing that system so much easier. And you don't necessarily have to hold your offense's hand, your players' hands, because again, they've seen a lot of football. They're going to be able to understand the concepts and the things that you're trying to do without making them all confused and having them play at a slower tempo than maybe they would if they were younger players. So.
We heard not only from Tim Lester, we heard from Kirk Ferentz, some thoughts on that. Also from Seth Wallace, the new assistant head coach. We'll get LeShun's take on that. Plus, quarterback play. Cade McNamara, injuries aside, we certainly know the importance there. Iowa asks a lot of their quarterback. I want to talk to LeShun a little bit about that and perhaps simplifying the offense, what a step forward that can mean for the quarterback position at the University of Iowa. We'll do that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, it's all about getting that best spot on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. And tell you what, Super Bowl, there is so much to like in this game. The prop menu is immense. I'm taking a look at rushing totals. I'm taking a look at under interceptions for Patrick Mahomes in 17 playoff games, just 4 interceptions in his career. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, 2, 3, how about 30? Not only can you bet on who's going to win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which player is going to score a touchdown, scoring multiple touchdowns in the game, yardage totals, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Trent LeShun back with you again on Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Your team every day. That's what we do here across the Locked On Network. LeShun, starting with quarterback. And I don't know how many times, and really, this is not just a Brian Ferentz thing or a Greg Davis thing or a Ken O'Keefe thing. It's been during the 25 years of Kirk Ferentz. Well, it takes a long time to learn the offense, and certainly for the quarterback. Why does it take such a long time to figure out this offense? Why is it that it feels like you have to have a master class in order to do it? What makes certainly quarterback play and just overall the offense in the past so difficult to pick up right away?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of that is so at Iowa, the quarterback is responsible for basically everything. So in addition to getting the play calls in and whatnot, they also have to go up and they have to identify protection changes, identify um, who the Mike linebacker is on any given defensive formation that we're going against. Because the quarterback is the one that points it out. There's other teams where the line points it out. They make those decisions and whatnot, and so the quarterback can just focus on the coverage they're seeing and whatnot. But when you add everything of all that piece of the puzzle, like it's just a lot to think about in a 40-second play clock. I mean, you get the play in, you break the huddle at 17, 15 seconds left on the play clock. You get up to the line of scrimmage, everyone gets lined up. Okay, you see how they're lined up initially. You make that protection changes if needed, or you identify like linebackers to where maybe the line is sliding or where we're working to in the run game, because they still do that in the run game as well. And then now you're okay, you check back up, you got the play clock, we're down to 3 seconds. Okay, we got to hurry up, we got to snap the ball and go from there. So like, right, it's just a lot to think about. Whereas, hey, you in other places, or if you run like an air raid offense, hey, you just run out there, you get lined up, line identifies who they're sliding to, and then you go ahead and you snap the ball and you're off and running. So when you add all that stuff on the quarterback's plate, I think it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to get accustomed to it. So I think that's some of the part that can make it a little bit more difficult, because again, when you add that piece into it, and now when you're calling a pass plays and you're telling your quarterbacks, hey, now you got to make sure that we're protecting the football. Hey, you haven't had the opportunity to get a good look at the defense, and you don't want to turn the ball over. You don't want to fumble it, because again, you don't want to get pulled out of the game or anything like that. So it can add a lot of stress to the offensive side of the ball. And when you're not running the football well, and you're stuck in those third and medium and third and long situations where the defensive line can obviously just tee off on the offensive line, and so that internal clock is ticking a lot faster, and you're trying to get the ball out. It can make it an extremely difficult situation for quarterbacks. So I think that is part of it. And then I haven't even talked about the audibles and the checks that you have on plays. And when you add that piece into it, and you're always talking, and Coach Ferentz always talks about with quarterbacks, getting us in the right play, making sure that we don't take a bad play worse, and things of that. Like it's just a lot to think about for the quarterbacks, and I feel like that's why it takes a ton of time for the quarterbacks at Iowa to really really get up to speed because they have to be able to do all of that. And then on top of that, Coach Ferentz has to trust them. I mean, at the end of the day, Coach Ferentz has to be the one to trust the guys that are out there, that he's going to go out there and he's going to execute as needed. That's why I know the past year for us was just so frustrating for fans just watching the offense, because it was just a bunch of stuff that we weren't accustomed to. Even when quarterback play hasn't been as great as we liked it to been, just this past year when it came to turnovers and getting in bad plays was just something that we just really weren't used to seeing. So I think that was a pretty frustrating part of the past season. But overall, that's why it's difficult when it comes to the quarterback position and being inserted into that at Iowa. Whereas running backs, hey, I mean, for the most part, hey, you're telling you what hole to go to. Pass protection is a little bit more difficult, but I mean, you start to understand it pretty quickly. So yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to be plugged in as a running back than it is as a quarterback at Iowa. So.
That makes a lot of sense, and really good breakdown of kind of what makes it so important for the quarterback and why we hear that going back, and the difficult nature of picking things up. There's another aspect that very well could be coming. It happened in a number of bowl games this year, and that was the communication aspect that we've seen for almost 30 years now in the NFL, where the OC or the head coach can talk to the quarterback until there's 15 on the play clock. They did it. Everything that I read from every team that was involved in that, absolutely loved it. And having that ability coupled with Tim Lester, not on the field, but up in the booth as an OC, something that I think everyone should. And unfortunately, the old OC was not able to do that after his tirade up in the press box in his first year as the OC and had to go down to the field. That aside, having your offensive coordinator up there, being able to see all those things, LeShun, you definitely know the difference there. That's got to be a huge aspect. I know there's play callers, head coaches that are play callers that have to do it on the field, but that eye in the sky, being either an offensive coordinator or being the offensive coach that's up there reeling, how important is that? And being able to see kind of the whole field, and how much easier is it to do it upstairs as opposed to down on the field?
Yeah, I think it makes it easier because I can, as an offensive coordinator, I can now make the adjustments on the fly. All right. I don't, as because again, it's the offensive coordinator, it's my offense, right? We're running the things that I want to run. And if I'm on the field, yeah, I can see a little bit, but I'm basically relying on whoever happens to be in the box, whether it's a offensive analyst, another offensive coach, wherever that happens to be up there, to essentially relay what they're seeing down to me, right? And make it a little bit more challenging to make those adjustments on the fly. Because again, they're going to be changing how they operate after the scripted plays. And I think we saw that. I think it really reared its head quite a bit this past season. Like, hey, our scripted plays, we come out and we're looking extremely well. We start off, extremely well on the offensive side of football. But then as the game moved along, it felt like the defenses adjusted very, very quickly, and then we didn't have a plan for it. And I think part of that is just because, again, you're relying on someone else up there in the box to relay those changes and adjustments, to you down on the field, versus being offensive coordinator in the box and making those changes. And as I understand, like, being on the sideline is definitely it's nice and fun to be able to do that. I think it presents additional, like, a challenge for your offensive coordinator being down on the field to be able to make those adjustments. So that's why I like the idea of having the offensive coordinator in the booth. And then if you add in the part where now, like, you have the communications in the helmets, now you don't even have to go through the middleman of the quarterbacks and maybe a receiver coach on the sideline do it signals to your quarterback. Now, hey, you see what they do, you see whatever the situation is, whatever the down and distance. All right, the offensive coordinators up there in the booth, they see maybe how they reacted, maybe the last play or maybe the last previous drive to that certain situation. Okay, now I can make this quick change, and now I can get the play down to my quarterback quickly. I can get us to the line of scrimmage quickly. Now I allow the quarterback to have more time to, again, do those things that I had just mentioned a few minutes ago. I can ID, the blitzes that the defense is showing. I have time to look at maybe how the safeties are rotating and the defense, and now I can figure out, okay, where I want to go with the football. So uh having your offensive coordinator in the press box is, I think, is something that should be done, because again, it makes it so much easier for that offensive coordinator to make those in-game adjustments and drive by drive adjustments versus, all right, now you kind of have to wait to get into the locker room at halftime to really have that more of an in-depth discussion to look at, maybe how the defense was adjusting. So
LeShun, one final thing. Hearing from Kirk, said he's open to change. I thought that was a big takeaway there. But Seth Wallace becoming the assistant head coach. And I don't know what that entails. It doesn't feel like they exactly know what it entails. I mean, there's some easy things. Kirk, he's being pulled a bunch of different directions. And we know that from just everything happening in college athletics. There's a lot on the plate of the CEO and kind of simplifying things there. Do you read it as this is Kirk saying, when my retirement comes, this is my number one choice? Can you read it that way, or is it just that a new title for a guy that deserves it? Seth Wallace has had a lot of opportunities. Illinois come after him. Minnesota's come after him. Northwestern's come after him to be a defensive coordinator. Is it just that, hey, a guy that we need to keep around and we got to find a way to make that happen?
yeah, I think it's potentially a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's definitely potentially a little bit of both. Um, yeah, I mean, Coach Wallace definitely deserves all the promotions, because again, phenomenal coach, um, has done an extremely good job since he's been at Iowa. I mean, heck, he was there when I was there. Obviously giving the running backs crap all the time because linebacker coaches, right? I mean, those guys we're always going button heads, so it always made sense. But I mean, he's done a phenomenal job as essentially basically being, Coach Parker's right hand man when it comes to that defense. And I think knowing that he has had a ton of opportunities to go elsewhere. I mean, all the defensive coaches has, but I think with just that his football smarts and his ability as a coach and the way that he's really helped solidify that linebacker group year after year and have been playing at a high level. It makes total sense why he got the promotions and all the raises. Now, when it comes to post Coach Ferentz, I don't know how those talks went. I mean, maybe it was something like, hey, like if that time comes, right, like you would be the person, right, to you basically have maybe the first crack at the interviews and whatnot. Basically, be in a position to essentially be handed off, that head coaching job. Maybe almost like how Ohio State a few years back when Urban Meyer retired, right? They kind of just handed it off to Ryan Day. Maybe in a situation like that, but you never really know what was in their mind, and who knows? I could just be talking just to talk at this point, but I definitely think it is significant that they did that, because I feel like that's something that it hasn't been something that they've done. And so I think it was extremely unique to go ahead and make that announcement, and especially adding that title. And it's not something I think that we should just be like brushing aside. But I still think that I see Coach Ferentz loves coaching, loves football, and I don't anticipating him going away, at least not this after this season. But you never know kind of what is going through the minds of Coach Ferentz and the new AD. So
Final thing on this front, and it pertains to LeVar Woods, who was interviewed for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers special teams job. He did not get the job. It went to somebody else. But the importance of somebody like LeVar. Now, LeVar was not the special teams coordinator when you were there. That was Chris White, but he has obviously elevated things and just how good they are in returns, in coverage units. And this is a guy, I kind of stumbled across this thought the other day. There's probably not a coach that deals with more people on the football roster than your special teams coordinator, because you need a bunch of different parts, right? So he's dealing with young guys early in their career, those kind of things. Just the importance of LeVar and your special teams coordinator, because he's working short of quarterbacks pretty much with everybody.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting that special teams coaches don't get more head coaching jobs. I mean, I get why they don't, but it's just interesting because again, these guys, when it comes to being a head coach, a lot of times, especially if you hire really good coordinators, a lot of times it's you basically essentially being a CEO and helping everyone else, your other assistant coaches, do the best jobs that they can, putting them in positions to succeed. And then as a special teams coach, you're in tune with basically every single situation that pops up during the game. Because again, you got to have the special teams units ready at any given time, whether it's end of half situations. I see you have your third down situations, you have your end of game situations, things like that. Like as a special team coach, you're going to be in tune with all of that. So you're going to have an idea of like, okay, these are the areas that we have success in, and on top of that, Coach Woods has coached on the offensive side of the football. He's coached on the defensive side of the football, and he's done a great job on both those fronts. So, um, you know, special teams coaches, especially guys like Coach Woods, yeah, you're interacting with basically everyone on a day-to-day basis because most people are going to be in special teams meetings. Most people partake in special teams, especially at Iowa. So uh it's I love the fact that Coach Woods had got that interview opportunity for the Bucks, and it's obviously not going to be his last opportunity. His opportunities are going to continue to grow and grow because again, how good the special teams units have been since Coach Woods took over. And I mean, special teams units have always been good at Iowa, but I feel like they've really taken gone to another level with Coach Woods taking that over, and it helps. And you have the experience that he had in the NFL playing special teams, and bringing that to Iowa. And I think he's a guy who has made a really big impact on a lot of the players. I mean, heck, you got Cooper DeJean, your best player on your football team, running down as a gunner on special teams units. I mean, that kind of tells you like, okay, like the type of respect that players have for Coach Woods, and the fact that he's not just going to put anybody out there. If you're the best player to help a certain unit, right? He's gonna take it, use you, and put you in a place to succeed. So, yeah, special team coaches, they deserve all the accolades. They deserve, I think, more opportunities
Mhm.
when it comes to helping running the ship. But I was super excited to see Coach Woods get that opportunity. But I'm happy that he's staying at Iowa for sure.
Not alone on that one, LeShun, no doubt about it. We continue here, Locked On Hawkeyes, Super Bowl thoughts in our final moments. Of course, George Kittle getting ready for a Super Bowl. MVP odds at FanDuel pretty good on George putting together a good performance. We'll talk about that. Give you some thoughts on the game as we wrap things up. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And right now, all users will get $100 off when they buy a big game ticket with code Vegas100. What would you do with an extra $100? Well, for me, if I was in Vegas getting ready for the game using the Gametime app, maybe I'll just throw it on the craps table. A little Yo 11. How about that? 15 to 1. We'll see if an 11 comes up and we can get a big one there. Gametime has killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I love the ability to see your seat before you buy it. So many different ways. A place like Carver Hawkeye Arena. I know tickets for the women's game that remain are incredibly high right now. Know exactly where your seat is going to be and do it with the Gametime app where you get upfront pricing, knowing exactly what those tickets are going to have. Zone deals also at Gametime. You pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for big time savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, all Gametime users get $100 off a big game ticket with code Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use Vegas100, VEGAS 100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, use code Locked On. That will get you $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Trent LeShun back with you one final time here. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. All right, 49ers and the Chiefs. It is Super Bowl 58, LeShun. Let's just start at the top. Who do you like in the game?
Yeah, so I've gone back and forth with this a million times. And if the Chiefs, didn't have Patrick Mahomes, like I would be like Niners for sure. Like no real question about it. Talent wise, top to bottom, probably the most talented team in the entire NFL. But the fact that the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, and for some reason, when teams play the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, they tend to go away from things that they do best for some odd reason.
Hmm.
And because of that, I've been leaning extremely heavy with the Chiefs, and I think that's where I'm gonna be putting my money is with the Chiefs because I feel that good about Patrick Mahomes. I feel like the only time that I bet against him and I came out on top was when I bet on Tom Brady. So
Oh, yeah.
like it I hate, reducing it down just to quarterbacks just because again these are two phenomenal teams, but it's definitely going to be a battle. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. But yeah, I mean I really like the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and pulling it out. I mean, he's been that great in the playoffs and continues to play at an extremely high level in the playoffs. And I feel like in games like this, the quarterback is really what ends up making that difference.
Guy you know pretty well, George Kittle, has become a star in his own right, developing tight end you, obviously what he's done on the field. When George showed up at 190 pounds and he looked at him and he's just a geeky looking dork. And what he morphed into, no, he had a lot of fun. He had a personality that went along with it. But seeing that him develop into one of the best tight ends in the game and a career, obviously, at Iowa was banged up for many parts of that. Could you anticipate that? And certainly early in his career when he showed up, that this guy was going to become not just a character in the league, but also one of the best tight ends.
If you would have asked me that when I first came in Iowa, George is going to be one of the best tight ends in the NFL, I'd have been like, I mean, he's a good player, but one of the best tight ends in the
Yeah.
NFL, like, I don't know about that. But, watching the way that he's developed and watching the way that he worked throughout his Iowa career to, put himself in a position to be an opportunity to show off his skill set. And the fact that, you know, he got drafted really to the perfect situation for him to thrive and continue to grow has been super exciting because you knew he had ability. You always knew he had that athleticism. You always knew he had great, run after the catch ability just based on how athletic he is and how, his size, how he ended up growing into, being over 250 pounds. Um, and you watch him develop year after year, and you're like, okay, maybe this guy's definitely gonna have a solid NFL future. But watching him to develop into this year the best tight end in the NFL has been just been fantastic to watch. It's been a joy to watch him play, and obviously super excited to watch him again in a Super Bowl. And hopefully this time around he won't get called for offensive pass interference on deep pass plays. So fingers crossed for that. But yeah, I would have like I said, if you would have asked me that when I was a freshman, George being one of the best tight ends in the entire NFL, I'd have said like, yeah, all right, man, like, haha, good joke, right? But no, I love it. I love George, and love watching him rise into really an NFL superstar.
71 right now at FanDuel. 70-1 for George Kittle to win the MVP of that one. Might be worth a couple of ducats just to have a little fun with Kittle in that one. LeShun, always enjoy the conversation. A lot to talk about here on the football side of things. A busy basketball night in front of us with Iowa, both men and women taking on Penn State. I'll have a breakdown of that one tomorrow. LeShun, we'll talk to you again next week. Appreciate your time.
Yep, sounds good. Go Hawks.